Our prison system is another area where great changes are needed. They should be as schools where wrongdoers are re-educated and then recirculated back into our society. The way our prison systems are being handled today is an atrocity. For the most part, when one enters one of these prisons, he is almost certain of two things. One, at some point he will be raped violently, and two, at some point he will be held in bondage through blackmail. The two may be related or they may be separate, but they will take place at some point in his stay. Blackmail is a power structure that is brought about by animal-based brain ego. It is caused, in the beginning, by a lack of self-esteem and self-worth. Forming the conscience is the only method of combating the makeup that is found in one committing blackmail. Rehabilitation using subliminal tapes and education is the only method at the present time to start the process of forming a conscience. Once these tapes are being used, it would be time for classes in the daytime hours. These would be private classes to begin with, because these prisoners will not let any of their buddies see them start to realize that they have a thinking process that is different from what they have used all their lives. The first lessons that these prisoners will receive after the start of the subliminal tapes, which will be based on feelings of self-worth and being part of the all of the universe, are that the prisoner will be given a look at the progress that each life should make. The goal of each life is the building of a conscience that will allow him to see that the way he treats other prisoners and other people in general is a direct reflection of the way he feels about himself. Evil does exist in the universe. As a matter of fact, it comprises a large segment of our universe. It is not so in the higher universes. This is Earth's place in the scheme of universal growth. It is a classroom experience set up for the purpose of recognizing evil in all its manifestations and learning to overcome its temptations. Evil is disguised in many, many ways, most of them quite alluring to humanity. When one finally reaches the stage of recognizing evil is the time when his real spiritual journey begins. You see, evil is of man's own making. When man first entered the animal bodies is when evil began. The animals themselves were ferocious up until that time, but had no conscience, so cannot be condemned for adhering to the survival of the fittest way of living. Once the spirit thought forms entered the body, everything changed among those who had spirit thought forms enter. This is ever true today. Once an animal reaches a stage where a small piece of the Creator enters his form, this animal starts acting on a higher level of consciousness. But in the beginning, the combination of ferocious animal instinct and untrained spirit thought forms was an explosive mixture. They had cunning and the ability to plan deeds to allow them to still continue with the survival of the fittest mode of living. This had to change, but it was a very slow process. Anger is the result of duality between the higher mind and the lower nature. When anger is the result, it is an indication that the lower nature won that particular battle. When compassion and understanding are the results of this duality battle, then it means that the higher mind won the battle. Some people have such poor self-worth that they don't believe they deserve a good life, and therefore reinforce evil and sabotage their happiness by breaking the rules of life because they don't care. A definition of evil that could be considered to be a spiritual definition would be any act that prevents any soul from growing in the light. Forgiveness is the biggest instigator of growth in any who has committed an evil act against another. Evil cannot be a permanent state, as all must return to the light before any can return to the light. Therefore, evil must not ever be thought of as permanent. A thought such as this would tend to lock it into permanency, and this could stop the evolution of the universe. There is no such thing as highly evolved evil. Evil can never be highly evolved because the fact that it is evil denotes its inability to be highly evolved. There can be very intelligent evil, very sly evil, but it's still evil, and the one doing it is not highly evolved. Evil cannot progress to the higher planes. One simply will not allow himself to progress past the Earth planet if there is an evil bone left in his body, in a manner of speaking. It will be the person himself who will ultimately judge himself as to whether a certain act he committed was a deliberate act of evil or was truly mistaken judgment. Therefore, the entity himself will be the one who determines when he has freed himself of all evil tendencies. Evil is ignorance of the light, but it encompasses more than that. It is very much a result of the animal-based brain caught up in ego. In other words, one who feels that there is no one who can tell him what to do. It also involves a total lack of self-esteem, because the one who has a balanced sense of self-esteem could not ever feel that no one had the right to tell him what to do. He would realize that to live and survive in society there must be rules and regulations, or all would be chaos. The one committing evil believes he is more important than all other beings, so he has an inflated sense of self-worth. Of course, you might say that these are all components of ignorance. The worship of members of the human race must stop. The sports figure and film stars are going to be some of the first areas where this worship will stop. It is acceptable to have a sports figure who teaches right methods, or an actress who can interpret a play wisely, or a musician who can touch on the truth when they perform. However, worship of these people will not be encouraged because it only serves to tear down the self-esteem of the rest of humanity. This lowering of self-esteem has been perpetrated in subtle ways, one being that an ordinary parent's action will never seem to amount to much in his children's eyes if the children have these stars to model or compare to their parents. Our television shows are also causing much destruction of self-esteem in our young people. This change in society must come about. Its time is here. The quality of life will be what matters, not the quantity of possessions. During this changeover period, everyone will be going through periods of frustration that at times are almost uncontrollable, at times imperceptible. It's as though one part of each person is saying, I know this doesn't matter. I know this is immaterial. I know that it's not important, but I still know that I want it done my way. This is due to sensing by all that the inner part of them, the creator part of them, the creativity, needs to come forward and express. It needs to be their own expression. So we must have compassion on these ones whom you might consider petty and childish in their actions. You must understand what is going on within them. When more of the self-confidence, the self-esteem, the self-assuredness is brought in, each one will begin to respect this part of the other and have the grace to give them the opportunity to express and grow. This is truly a trying time for all humanity because it is a changeover period in the consciousness of all. Each one of us is being affected in his own way and going through his own struggle as to how we handle what comes towards us as far as personal values go. Each person is responsible for his own decisions. Let none take that responsibility for you. Be ever alert for manipulation. Manipulation is something that is being done by almost all humanity in one form or another, either very blatantly or extremely subtly, at all degrees between the two. It is learned very early by children in school. They have grown up without television advertising, and they accept manipulation as a common practice. Very few ever question if it's right or wrong. They just do it. It is against universal law, but most people aren't aware they are doing it. They need to be enlightened to just what they do that is manipulative. A mother will quite often use manipulation to get a child to do something she wants him to do. The child will in turn manipulate the parents. One parent will manipulate the other. The one thing that would combat manipulation is truth. Another would be unselfishness. The biggest guard against it is do unto others as you would have them do unto you. If everyone practiced the golden rule, manipulation would cease. Anyone in politics needs to be on the alert always for the subtlest means of manipulation. There are some people for whom this is an art. These people have made a career out of the art of manipulation. These would be our lobbyists. They are committing a crime against universal law every day of their lives. What they must think about is that it is very true that ignorance of the law is no excuse applies also to universal law. They will have much to pay back in the way of karma to humanity as a whole for their acts of lobbying. The lawmaker is being paid by all the people. It is very hard for this lawmaker not to be influenced by the lobbyist. It would take someone of great personal power, morality, and courage to withstand some of the devious methods that lobbyists pursue in getting the elected officials to change their vote, which should be the vote of the majority of the people. Current teens must know that it is part of their divine heritage to seek answers other than what has always been given and accepted by society. They must challenge the system to ever improve the system. They should be made to see that they will be remiss in their spiritual journey if they allow discrepancies in the system as they see them to go unchallenged, and you must believe they will see all that is not as it should be. Truly, they are much enlightened as to universal law. They would not be on the earth plane at this time as youth who will guide the earth into the new dimension of thought that must come if they were not well grounded in universal law and cosmic concepts. They must trust and believe in the deep inner truths they feel, because this will be the way to the restructuring of all phases of our society. It must start with the enlightenment and education of these teenagers, and more of them should be encouraged to examine not only the political structure, but also the social structure and the business structure of our particular country first. They will come up with a clear outline of a better way of setting up the ponderous machinery that at the present is necessary, but will not be a little further along. These youths will have many ideas of better, more simple, uncomplicated ways of achieving the same results as now being done, but that is only part of what they can do. They also have the power to change the results. This is where their true value will be seen. It is one thing to know a better way to achieve the same results, but the beauty of true spiritual growth is in being able to change the results. These teens can do that. The totally synthesized person is one who accepts the reality of a double evolutionary track, our physical and spiritual lives evolving hand in hand. To explain, look at it from a more overall view. You have a little world down there that is like a pair of twins. One is very animalistic nature and one is of a divine nature. The divine sparks come from planet number 3 and are quite innocent and uneducated. They are searching, eager to learn, grow, experience, and evolve. They meet up with the creatures inhabiting planet number 4, this beautiful Earth. These creatures are able to not only enjoy all of nature, but are quite content to just wander around enjoying it with no desire or curiosity about anything. The divine sparks think how much fun it would be to have a form, to be able to experience Earth in a physical body. Thus the joining of the two completely different natures took place. But when that divine spark, that peace of mind, is in place, it is constantly pulling up the level of thinking higher than the brain could achieve without it. Eventually, this piece of the Creator's mind must become stronger than the brain of the animal form. This is the duality that all go through. When the two are blended, then real progress can begin to take place, and eventually the peace of the Creator's mind overpowers the stubbornness of the human brain. It knows enough not to take control completely, because that is not the plan. The plan is to mold the human brain into a beautiful reflection of the Creator by having the peace of the Creator entwine and enmesh into every fiber of the human brain, and enlighten it and raise the vibratory rate that this brain is capable of functioning at. Many families' problems are self-made, and they must be self-undone. These families must know that they have the power and the strength to undo the tangled web that has been spun without spinning any more webs. There is a policy concerning money that has been apparent in many households, that of robbing Peter to pay Paul. This simply cannot be done anymore. Peter needs to get his share of what funds there are, and Paul must realize that he cannot any longer be served by taking from Peter. To explain this further, Peter represents absolute necessities. Paul represents unessential expenditures. This has been done to serve the materialistic desires of the family. In the beginning of a relationship, each wants to give the other everything, and the other wants to have everything, so they purchase much more than they need to have, and are in serious trouble ever after. The lifestyle they try to maintain is not being supported by income. They do not use common sense. This is how problems get started. To improve the situation, this family still faces the lessons of self-denial in the material realm. They must know also that they will be tested, not only as to their love and faith in each other, but on a more important level, they will be tested as to their commitment to their spiritual growth. A change in attitude is needed, a willingness to suffer deprivation of material things, and also a willingness to be apart from each other if necessary, so that when the time has come, they can be together on a somewhat better scale of living than they have achieved thus far. People are very stubborn as far as giving up their materialistic goals. The only way to help this situation is through the children. The early home and school training of children is of the utmost importance. Their values are learned by what they see and hear around them from the moment of birth onward. Once a false value, say, of money is learned from a beloved parent, then it is extremely hard to uproot. Many of the children and youth today do not want to be disrespectful of their parents, but at the same time realize that the parents' values are not what they should be. This puts the youth in quite a dilemma. Most of the time they give up because they feel that they, the youth, must be wrong because all the older generation believes and lives their lives with a materialistic set of values. But a child's intuition is quite strong. Adults don't realize this and try to dominate their children's lives with their own interpretations and opinions, when quite often they should let the child express his feelings. The least that should be done is to let him express himself and include his ideas for consideration as part of the decision-making process.